Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube page. My name is Eric, and today we're going to be talking about how to retain your sanity in the crazy world that we live in today. Now, of course, in today's political climate, as well as the climate in general, with pretty much all online discourse, which is where the majority of the discourse takes place today, for better or for worse, it almost seems like a hopeless mess. Basically, conservatives thinking liberals are wrong on everything, liberals thinking conservatives are wrong on everything, and those in the middle just really don't know what to do about anything, and they just want it to all end. So here are 5 tips that I've come up with that really can help you retain hope in today's world. So number 1 is to go out of your way to actively search out positive stories. Now, I know that a lot of us just sort of scroll through our Facebook feed. I know I do that. In fact, sometimes I still fall into the trap of doing it. First thing we do in the morning, we just go there, we scroll through it, and that is honestly a landmine for losing hope. Sure, you may come across a story that's positive, but the majority of your Facebook feed is just going to be negative in some way, or at least they will have people putting a negative spin on things. So, if you want to just start your day, don't pick up your phone yet at this point. Just go out, get ready, and research actively positive stories, specifically. And here are some examples of positive stories that you can search for. For example, let's say you're a person who's passionate about abortion or even adoption in general. Now, let's also say that although you're passionate about it, you can't adopt a kid right now, or you can't actively contribute to those specific causes any more than you already are, or that you can't do it in any way. Well, you can go out and actively research specifically good stories that have happened with other people with regards to those stories. You can search out different places in your area, and you don't have to necessarily adopt anybody, because many of them will have Facebook pages, and many of them will say, hey, this girl, so-and-so, we're saying goodbye to her where she goes off to her family, or something like that. In fact, you don't even have to search for necessarily things in your region, specifically. You can go and look up things in different towns, specifically in different towns that may be near you, just so that you can look and see, oh, this happened in this state. I mean, after all, we see stories about things that happen in completely different states from us all the time, and frankly, they piss us off plenty, and even when it had nothing to do with us, so why not go and channel that to go and look at some positive story that happened that was a good thing. Sometimes you may even have to go and look on Google, but don't just look at the first page. Go to the second, third, fourth page, and if you see a negative headline, just, and you really are interested in it, just put a pin in it, go and put it there, bookmark it, something like that, look at it later. Because at least this way you'll have much more positivity there. Because here's the truth, bad news sells. And you could have, for example, 50 pastors who in a region, and they live lives holy, they do decently, they don't do anything nefarious, and everybody's generally happy in the community and everything else. Well, if you have one pastor who commits adultery, for example, who do you think's going to get covered? The pastor who committed adultery. Bad news sells. So for every one bad thing that happens, many other good things also happen. I know it can be very cynical, and there's pretty much everybody is saying, well, I'm losing hope in humanity and everything else. And look, there are problems. I'm not going to deny that. But simply having an imbalanced view of things is not healthy for anybody. And it certainly doesn't need to be a pessimistic worldview that we have where, oh, well, this is just not going to work, because when we're always thinking worst case scenario is going to happen because you constantly see all these horrible things happening out there. Number 2, have a healthy skepticism for any kind of documentary or interview. Now, I'm not saying that they aren't useful at all, but don't look at them as the be-all, end-all of many different things. There are countless times where people have interviews where sometimes a person may not necessarily anticipate a question and maybe a little bit, maybe not phrase things exactly the right way. And many people just can't really, they simply just are caught off guard by the question. I mean, the truth of the matter is, I know that we like to have snippets of people saying, oh, well, you screwed up on this question? That's easy. Well, there's a lot of things that can happen during an interview that you can just sometimes forget answers, or in some cases, they may be newer to the person who's asking them. Like, for example, there are many people on college campuses who, may have not really interacted with somebody else's position, and they may be just firing off the cuff and different things like that. It doesn't mean that, they're necessarily like this terrible idiot or a horrible person or something like that. They may just be saying things that are off the cuff and maybe just be reactions, and it may be just a defensive mechanism, not necessarily something they're thinking deeply about. Never underestimate the ability of somebody to twist somebody else's words. So, have a healthy skepticism towards documentaries, and in some cases, yeah, they may completely screw up. But that doesn't mean that the whole person is just this irredeemable idiot who can't be reasoned with, and that it's hopeless, it's stupid, because that's a recipe for disaster and despair. Number 3 is that we need to stop making politicians the primary way that we get things done and change people's minds and hearts. Because here's the reality of the situation. I'm not saying politics isn't important. We do need the politicians to change laws wherever it's appropriate. Here's the truth. Very often, culture change precedes politics. Politicians, more often than not, respond to cultural trends. If politicians see something going on in the culture, they try to latch onto it and say, oh, well, they're talking about this now? Well, hey, I'll give you this thing if you vote for me. They're always looking for different incentives to incentivize people to vote for them. And if they picture a cause that you're passionate about, they're like, oh, well, then maybe we should look for this. Pro-lifers, for example, they did many cultural changes, and they basically kept doing this and kept talking about it, and they paid off. It's not fully over, but a good step is to put this at the forefront of their fight, which is to say, the issue of life is important to us, and this is how you will get votes if you try to get different things done. There were still countless good things that pro-lifers did. There are countless crisis pregnancy centers that existed before Roe v. Wade was overturned that did convince mothers of their own free will to go through with the pregnancy, even though it was still a legal option to get an abortion. And if you want to have more on that, you can check out Allie Beth Stuckey's, that's in the description on her podcast, And there are many other examples of different things like that, too. In fact, there's a ministry called Pro-Abundant Life that has 1,200 clinics to try and help people with unplanned pregnancies, to try and provide support, whether financial, physical, material needs, and everything else, as well as giving the option of discipleship. Now, they'll still help people who aren't Christians, and, they won't force it on them, but still they'll provide them resources if they need it at all, or they want to. But 1,200 clinics. That was before Roe v. Wade. Do you want to know how many Planned Parenthood clinics there are in the United States? 600. That's a 2-to-1 difference. That's a lot. That's what pro-lifers did before Roe v. Wade. Not to mention the fact that there's plenty of other people who've been financially helped by charities, by Christians, by generosity, by donation, regardless of what you think of any kind of policies that we have with regards to the poor and different things like that. One area that even non-believers will generally admit that Christians specifically are good at is, well, charity. And there's plenty of stuff if you want to go and look into just how generous we can really be, statistically speaking. But also, let's consider something. Politicians are incentivized by basically power. It's a well-known fact that, frankly, politics tends to corrupt people. If there is one group of people, broadly speaking, that have almost universally, and in most cases rightfully, been distrusted, it's politicians. And even politicians who may be sincere and genuinely want to have change, well, to be blunt, they can't do it most of the time. At least not right away. And there are so many ways in which things can go wrong. So putting your primary trust and primary way of making things change or thinking, oh, things are going to go well, to be frank, that's going to lead to endless despair. Putting your trust in a group that is notoriously untrustworthy and will lie at the drop of a hat is generally not a good strategy to be hopeful. Number 4 is to not saturate yourself with political memes. Memes are fun, memes are great, but for politics and topics that really seriously affect people's lives, they're wholly inadequate to really come to any type of conclusion. And also, having yourself inundated with different memes, it can be rather toxic. Because after all, if somebody's position can be easily debunked within one unsimple passage, then yeah, you can clearly think, oh, well, clearly these idiots don't know what they're talking about. No rational person could ever be fooled into thinking that this position is correct. As much as it can be clear to some people that certain things are right and other things are wrong, that's fine. But thinking that people who are genuinely intelligent can't ever be deceived is, to be frank, just naive. There are people who are genuinely smart who can be easily fooled into thinking something is true when it's not. I'm going to say something that may upset a few people, but if all the research you've done consists of listening to a podcast that happens to align with your views, you're not an expert. You may be right, and I may even agree with you on your conclusion, but thinking as though you're just this smarter than everybody else, not the case. Intelligence, or rather knowledge, is highly compartmentalized. Yes, you can be incredibly intelligent on one end, on one topic, and you can be horribly wrong on another. That's just the way human beings are. We don't always recognize it. We always have, cognitive dissonance. We all do, whether we want to admit it or not. We compartmentalize things. It's just a fact. That's just the way our brains are designed. And coming to and having a full appreciation and understanding of the topic, of pretty much almost any topic that is politically related, and you can't become an expert just by listening to the same podcasts over and over and over again. Not saying not to do that, but if you really want to get to the nitty-gritty and actually change people's minds and not be despaired, then you have to do more of the hard work. If you think I'm wrong that you can be easily deceived, there are several examples shown by John McCrae of What Do You Meme about how several conservative figures really propped up Andrew Tate. And I know that, again, whether or not he's guilty of the things that he's been accused of, we can debate that. But the conservative interviewees and interviewers, Andrew Tate, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, made a lot of egregious errors, just on a factual basis. And if you want to look in there, and I'll prove it, just take a look at that video, because again, I don't want to just rip off his content. He beat me to the punch, he got there first. So take a look at that, because the truth is that we can often just believe things and assume that the person that we know is, reliable and credible, but that's a big trap. So, don't get overconfident. And also, because if you think that everybody else is getting something obviously wrong all the time, and you're constantly saying, how could people not know this? Well, you're going to be very cynical and think, well, if they can't understand this, oh, well, clearly our country is hopeless. When in fact, there are many unchallenged assumptions that lead to their conclusion that maybe we haven't considered, and that maybe, if dealt with, could lead to them changing their mind and be awakened to a new truth. Now, number 5 is judging whether somebody is hopeless or not based on what they're presently saying is always a bad idea. Many conservative figures, such as Candace Owens and even Misha Petrov, they used to be liberals. Very leftist, very into different ideologies, and yet they did change. I know of a person personally who basically had sex with numerous guys, who claimed to be a Christian, who also, by the way, got pregnant out of wedlock, and yet she kept the baby. Not only that, but because the father was, well, an idiot, he left, but now she got her life together. And not only does she still profess Christ, but she managed to find somebody, and they're in a stable relationship. And their kid is growing up, and she's highly discipled and shows true fruits of repentance, which is a good testimony. So, don't lose hope with somebody simply because you see them doing something stupid on a TikTok video. Again, I know it's tempting, but just don't do it. So, thanks so much for watching. Hopefully these tips can help you. If you like this video, you can subscribe, share it with your friends, and I'll see you all very soon.